A very good evening to one and all present. Sustainability Reporting Standard Board of ICAI welcomes you to the webinar on business responsibility and sustainability reporting. I'm joined by the Honorable President of the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India, CA Atul Kumar Gupta ji. Honorable Vice President of the Institute, CA Nehar Jambusaria ji is just joining in a minute. And the Vice Chairman of the Board, CA Durgesh Kabra ji. CA Devashish Mitra ji, Central Council member of ICAI. We are fortunate to have an elite panel of speakers, including Shri Amarjit Singh ji, Executive Director, Security Exchange Board of India, Shri Gyaneshwar Singh, the Honorable Joint Secretary, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, will be joining us shortly. Professor Marvin King, Chairman Emeritus, IIRC, Mr. Charles Tilley, CEO, IIRC, Mr. Timothy J. Mohin, Chief Executive, GRI, Mr. Satish Gold, Director Advocacy, IFAC, Mr. Shikhar Jain, Principal Counselor, CII, ITC Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development, and we are also joined by our Honorable Vice President, C.A. Nehar Niranjan Jambusaria ji. Friends, building sustainable economy requires in three main areas: a shift in the corporate business models, a reoriented and mobilized financial system, and an enabling environment that promotes regulation and incentivizes action. It is the need of the hour that there is a collaborative and consensus shift to a more sustainable path and to put people and planet at the heart of global value creation, to create new markets and technologies, to explore innovation and disruptive solutions for our most intractable challenges, and to develop new partnership models that deliver more rapid and sustainable results. Globally, the focus is on long-term value rather than short-term value. I remember my interaction with Shri Amarjit Singh ji at his office when he was saying that in the times to come, financial reporting will be of less and less importance, and more importance will be of the non-financial information. So even when there is an integrated reporting, there'll be more focus on the non-financial reporting. And he was so right. All initiatives and practices towards responsible business conduct, transformation and growth needs to be put in standardized and consolidated manner before all the stakeholders in the form of non-financial reporting. In India, the seeds of sustainability reporting were sown in 2011 in the form of National Voluntary Guidelines on Social, Economic and Environmental Responsibilities of Business, which were revised in 2019 as National Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct. The SEBI came out with Business Responsibility Report, and it actually needed a revision now as per the revised guidelines. Further, the reporting framework needs to be aligned to the broader context of United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights and Sustainable Development Goals, along with other widely accepted international non-financial sustainability reporting frameworks, the United Nations Global Conduct, the GRI, Integrated Reporting, the CDP, ISO 26000, and Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, US. ICAI complements Indian regulators to proactively and strategically upgrade sustainability reporting framework of the Indian corporates by releasing the much-awaited report of the Committee on Business Responsibility Reporting, on which the two key pillars, Shri Amarjit Singh ji and Shri Atul Gupta ji, are here today with us as well. Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report is an open and transparent way to communicate intent and commitment of business to its stakeholders. BRSR focuses on the adoption of responsible business practices in the interest of a business social setup and the environment on one hand, and explains how an organization impacts the environment and society over time, together with its governance perspective on the other. The objective of this webinar is to create awareness among members and other attendees towards the newly introduced BRSR formats, their applicability, and the way the professionals should get ready to provide best of services in the changing sustainability landscape. Today, I am extremely delighted to share that the SRSB of ICAI, under the able leadership of our Honorable President and Vice President, are also launching two courses, 5-day Executive Development Program on BRSR and certificate course on the Enhanced Corporate Reporting. These are two important steps from ICAI to show our commitment towards capacity building and training our members to develop the professional skills and competencies. I would now invite our Honorable Vice President C. Nihar Jambusaria ji to address the participants of the webinar. The board is extremely thankful to his thought leadership and guidance in all the initiatives of the board. Over to you, C. Nihar Jambusaria ji. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning or good evening in different parts of the world. Honorable President of the Institute, C. Atul ji, Sri Amarjit Singh ji, the Executive Director, SEBI, Chairman of Sustainability Reporting Standards Board, C. Sanjeev Singhal, Vice Chairman, C. Durgesh Kabra, and the learned speakers of this session. Let me at the outset congratulate the board for organizing this webinar, which was much required at the time when sustainability is given immense importance in our country as it is given in all parts of the world. And we know that all these years businesses have given significance to only one pillar of business, and that is profit. Our government has also now realized that we must consider in our reporting profit, people and planet, the triple bottom line which has been widely discussed. And the three pillars of this non-financial reporting are economy, society and environment. So in today's time, and let me mention at this stage that at the beginning of this year, probably it was our president's vision that sustainability should be given importance, and for the first time in the institute, this board has been formed, which itself shows his commitment and institute's commitment to sustainability efforts of the government, of the society and the entire world. When we had one occasion to discuss sustainability efforts with Executive Director Amarjit Singh ji, who is present today, we discussed about capacity building. We also discussed about sincerity in this effort, and this sincerity can be achieved only if there is reporting of the of this sustainability efforts. It is not enough if the businesses report on non-financials, but if there is a certification by an auditor, it will achieve more seriousness. The executive director also informed us about the new initiative of SEBI, and that is formation of social stock exchange, like social impact indicators. So this shows to what extent and to what level sustainability efforts are going. And India would be very sincere and would like to contribute to these efforts and frame even standards which uniformly must be followed. And these standards will be keeping in line with the global standards, where anybody can compare Indian sustainability reporting with reporting in any part of the world. So let me once again congratulate the chairman and vice chairman for making all efforts to make sustainability efforts of the government a grand success by taking it seriously and making day in and day out all efforts to see that the best is given in this country. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks a lot, CA Nihar Niranjan Jambusaria-ji, the Honorable Vice President of the ICAI, for sharing your perspective on how the profession can be strengthened to take lead to sustainability reporting as a landscape. We are fortunate to always have this full support in the activities of the board. Now, I would take this privilege to invite CA Atul Kumar Gupta ji, the Honorable President of ICAI, to share his valuable thoughts and insight with the members This board has been established under his leadership, and we are extremely grateful to his vision and support, which he is always giving to all the members of our committee and helping us to achieve the best at this committee. Now over to Atul Kumar Gupta ji. Sir, you are on mute.
Atul bhai, kindly unmute yourself.
Sir, you are on mute. Atul bhai, you are on mute.
Honorable President, you are on mute. Kindly unmute yourself.
I believe now you can hear me.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. A very good evening and good afternoon to all the viewers at the different part of the world. And let me pray the Almighty for the well-being of each one of you in this COVID pandemic situation. Please remain, be safe and healthy. At the outset, I, on behalf of the ICAI, welcome each one of the eminent personalities from across the globe in this very important webinar and the web meeting being organized by the ICAI. Dear colleagues, as being discussed by the Chairman, Sustainability Reporting Standard Board of ICAI and the Vice President ICAI, that after the Sustainability Accounting Standard Board being developed by the USA, AICAI, it is a second of such kind that a board is being established by the professional bodies out of the 175 professional bodies across the globe. Friends, we are all aware that there is a lot of challenges the entire our ecosystems are facing because of the various aspects related to the rampant development of the industry and the various growth factors. You are aware that when we are talking about the use of the natural water, the resources, including the water, when we are talking about the use of the renewable energy of sources of renewable energy or any other, it is very important for all of us that we have to see that the businesses are done with the more and more responsibility. And as rightly mentioned by our colleagues, that it is our duty as a professional when we are being known as the partner in nation building, that we create that kind of a standards, the metrics which provides not only the information but also in a machine readable language, so that we can understand that what are the various aspects related to the business reporting, the business responsibilities are being reported by the various organizations. You are aware that there are the number of initiatives being taken by the various regulators, the companies in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, wherein we have the 17 goals and the 169 plans. Even I am happy to intimate you that the Indian Railway, which is the third largest railway of the world, has decided that they will become completely green, that there will be no emissions of the that kind of a particles which is not permitted by the 2030. At the same time, you are also aware that the UNCAD has given the recently a metrics to see that how we can have this reporting on the compliances related to the sustainable development goals. You are aware that looking into this all this scenario, the ICAI also established the sustainability reporting standard board so that we can assimilate the requirement of the society at large, sit with the regulators not only at the national level but at the global level to see that how we can develop more and more important framework of reporting not only the financial but also the non-financial data. Here it is very, very important for all of us to agree on one point, that when we are talking about the IFRS, there are the comparability which is available at the global level. So my financial statement is globally comparable because we are following the same set of a standard. Likewise, for the non-financial information, gradually the society at large has to come at a single platform that my reporting is being comparable at the global level. Even being discussed that at times will come when the portfolio management, the portfolio will be managed based on the companies who are following the more sustainable policies and also adhering with the business responsibility reporting as compared to looking into the profit or the growth of these companies. Friends, you are aware that the India recently constituted a committee that is called the Business Responsibility Reporting Committee, constituted by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Being the part of that particular committee, I feel privileged to work with the various regulators, and I appreciate the efforts put in by the various regulators in bringing that particular report, which will pave the fundamental framework of the future reporting by the Indian corporates and having a collaboration with the global leaders. Friends, I just wish to compliment the chairman, Dr. Sanjeev Singhal ji, and vice chairman, C. Durgesh Kabra ji, both the chairman and vice chairman of this first ever sustainability reporting standard board. So they are, being the founder of the chairman and vice chairman, they have a lot of responsibility, and they are actually working more than the required, that okay, how we have to create that kind of a networking and the framework for this business reporting requirement. Friends, you are aware that recently the ICAI will be launching the two very important programs on that particular aspect. One will be the online executive development program on this business responsibility and the sustainability reporting, and as well as one certificate course which will give the more and more in-depth to the participants, to the user, so that they can also contribute in a very important subject of this business reporting vis-a-vis the sustainability reporting. Last but not the least, I will urge to each one of you to disseminate this aspect, that once we will be creating this kind of a framework, it should be made available on a machine readable language, so that it can be the analysis around that data, the comparability around that data, and the usability of the data can be there, which we can provide a framework for the effective decision making in the times to come. I congratulate and welcome again to all of my colleagues from the across the globe for participation in this particular program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Honorable President ICAI. This is truly a global program where people from IFAC, GRI, and then the IIRC, and then all the Indian colleagues, and then we will have representation from NCA, SEBI, CII. So we are indeed thankful for your thoughtfulness for making this board. Now I would request the webinar agency to screen the two brochures of the 5-day program and the online certificate course on enhanced corporate reporting, and under the august hands of our Honorable President and Vice President and all the panelists, we would like to announce our Honorable President the launch of these two courses.
I am happy to intimate all the panelists and the viewers that the ICAI is now starting an executive development program. It will be online, looking into the COVID situation and otherwise as well, so that you can have an ease of access anytime, anywhere. That is the first ever, the business reporting and the sustainability reporting, responsibility and the sustainable reporting program on this.
I would now request Honorable Vice President to launch the second program. The agency can put up the second program on enhanced corporate reporting. I would request the agency to please put up the second program. Honorable Vice President, sir. Honorable Vice President, sir, kindly launch it.
Sir, you are on mute. Vice President, sir, you are on mute.
Okay. So with the permission of the Honorable Vice President, we are launching this program. And now I would request my council colleague, C. Devashish Mitra, to give a brief glimpse of both the courses to the members. I may also extend my gratitude to him, as he was the co-convener of the group, along with our another council colleague, CIMP Vijay Kumarji, for making these special efforts to ensure that the course structure is designed comprehensively with relevant coverage. Over to you, CA Devashish Mitra ji.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev Singhal ji.
Yeah.
The President and Vice President of ICAI, the representative of SEBI, representative from MCA, our international guests, a very good evening from India. when we did this program and when we were developing both these programs, there was a lot of discussion on the group what this program could contain, because please note, it is a original kind of exercise. The executive development program, which you have seen on your screen, it's a 5-day program. With 5 days covering 5 sessions, and you will have 4 hours of online session. 5-day program, 5 sessions, 4 hours of online sessions. And what we want, those who are joining this executive development program is understand the current regulatory framework of business reporting and sustainability reporting, and getting the participants ready to prepare business reporting and sustainability report, comply with SEBI BRR disclosures along with MCA BRSR disclosures. So this course, the executive development 5-day program, and you have this course, the rudiments of business responsibility and sustainability reporting. The other one, a bit longer, that's a certificate course meant for chartered accountants. It's a 12 days course, 50 hours course, along with online classes for 4 weeks. And by the time you end up this course, this is a certificate course, you have a knowledge of enhanced corporate reporting. You know the rudiments, you get a grip of it. The reporting, the SEBI requirements, I think those of us who will go through this certificate course will be in a position to comply with both SEBI and MCA requirements, regarding the business reporting and sustainability. So these 2 courses, the Chartered Accountants of India is very proud to have announced these courses, and full credit to the committee and led by Sanjeev Singhal for having led from the front to ensure that these courses take off at the earliest. So with these words, I wish the participants who will be joining this course all the very best, and those of us who are watching me, please note that these courses, we are convinced, would be of great value add to the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Devashish Bhai, for giving a brief about the 2 programs. Friends, we are privileged to have the presence of Shri Amarjit Singh Ji, Executive Director, Security Exchange Board, who has very kindly agreed to take time out of his other pressing commitments and address our members. We are certainly looking forward to hear his views on the thought process behind this new report and the outcome which are expected from the report. Shri Amarjit Singh Ji has a rich experience and has been working with Security Exchange Board of India, the security market regulator for India, for the last 25 years. And he has extensive experience in regulation and supervision of securities market. He is presently the Executive Director in charge of the Corporate Finance Department. He has been involved in various international regulatory initiatives. He has acted as the Sherpa for SEBI's representation on the board of International Organization of Securities Commission, called as IOSCO, for 7 years, and he has chaired the assessment committee of IOSCO during 2016 to 18 and steered an assessment program for conducting thematic assessment at the global level. He represents SEBI as a part-time member on the NFRA and also on the board of governor of the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I hope, first of all, I'm visible and I'm audible. So that's a new.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. So Mr. Gupta, President ICAI, Mr. Jambusaria, Vice President, Dr. Singhal, Chairman SASP, JS Shri Ganeshwar Singh Ji, I hope he's joined by now, Professor Marvin King, all distinguished speakers, participants in this seminar. Very good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. It's a pleasure to be a part of this webinar, part of this event. Thanks for having me here. So first of all, let me wholeheartedly congratulate ICAI and the leadership of ICAI for having the vision for setting up this Sustainability Reporting Standards Board. I'll refer to it as SRSB going forward, just for the sake of brevity. So, to my mind, I think it's a huge forward-looking initiative, and you deserve all kudos for this. And it's very timely, very expedient one, considering the times we are living in. So, as I think one of you already mentioned, there are not many institutions like this around the world, and so that makes it even more special. And I think this institution, this board, can actually make a huge difference in the ESG landscape, not only in the country, but also I think globally. If we play it right and if we take it forward in the right direction, we can make a difference, maybe in the Asia Pacific region or globally. So my compliments for setting this up. This has been an eventful month, for the ESG space in India. Again, as some of you mentioned, the report on BRR, the revised BRR, Business Responsibility Reporting, that was released by Ministry of Corporate Affairs earlier this month. Taking a cue from there, SEBI also released a consultation paper for consulting on the report for listed companies. So this has been an eventful month, and now your event today at the end of the month, I think it all sort of fits in together. So what I will do, turning to my remarks, I will, as you expect me to do that, I will focus primarily on the report. So I would like to, in the next 15-20 minutes, which has been allotted to me, I will begin with by sharing the genesis of, some people may not be aware as to how it all started in India. So genesis of ESG reporting in India. Next, I will reflect a little bit upon the context of this work, of this report that was released. Then, I'll very briefly touch upon the main highlights of the report and dwell more time on the way forward as I see it, and also what role your institution can play in that. So, with this background, so as I said, genesis, context, main highlights, and the way forward, how I see, this panning out going forward. So, some of you will have to bear with me. Some of you may already know about the background, but just for the benefit of those who may not be so familiar, let me straight away jump into the genesis of business responsibility reporting in India. So it goes back to 10 years, almost the beginning of this decade, 2011, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, they released something called National Voluntary Guidelines on social, environmental, and economic responsibilities of business. So briefly, they're referred to as NVGs, National Voluntary Guidelines. This was in 2011. The target audience was the corporate sector. Idea was, I think, to bring in, on a voluntary basis, greater sensitivity to the issues relating to, the environment, climate, and society. So we took a cue, SEBI took a cue from that NVGs, National Voluntary Guidelines, and we introduced business responsibility reporting in 2012. That was a year after the NVGs were released. To begin with, we also wanted to, take it in a gradual manner. So we made it applicable for top 100 companies by market capitalization, top listed 100 companies. And basically, we gave a format, what is called as business responsibility report today. Basically, it's a format which is prescribed by SEBI, and it requires the corporates to disclose the initiatives they've taken from a ESG perspective during the year. It has to be disclosed as a part of the annual report. In 2015, we, extended this requirement of business responsibility reporting to top 500 companies. In 2017, SEBI introduced voluntary adoption of integrated reporting by top 500 companies. And that requirement is still there. And this step that we took in 2015, this further recognized the increasing need of stakeholders for disclosure of non-financial information. Last year, 2019, I think, was a very eventful year for ESG space. BRR gained further momentum, and there were 2-3 key activities which took place in 2019. The first one was that we extended the requirement of BRR. SEBI extended the requirement to top 1,000 companies. So 100, 500, and now 1,000 companies. As on date, 1,000 companies are mandatorily required to disclose the BRR. And in the same year, 2019, Ministry of Corporate Affairs revised and aligned the NVGs, which had come from MCA, with the Sustainable Development Goals. So see, this space has been dynamic. Globally, things have been changing. So there is a need to, be up to date and not be obsolete in terms of the framework that you have. So Ministry of Corporate Affairs decided to rework the NVGs, and they aligned it with Sustainable Development Goals and also the United Nations guiding principles on business and human rights. And combining the SDGs and UNGPs, they released national guidelines on responsible business conduct. So, taking note of this, a committee was set up by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and SEBI and Institute of Chartered Accountants, and several other stakeholders were a member of that committee. And that committee worked through the year to rework the format of the business responsibility report. And that report was, as I mentioned earlier, was released earlier this month. And it has made recommendations for revising the format of BRR. So that's, the genesis. I mean, in terms of this, I've given you a quick snapshot of the journey that we've taken in the last 10 years. So why is this work more important today? So what is the current context of this work? So I just would like to outline 3 quick observations at a broader level. So first, the financial capital is rapidly losing its preeminence to a combination of human, intellectual, natural, and social capital, as even your IIRC initiative very clearly recognizes that. So intellectual capital today is more important than the financial capital. You could start your company in a garage and become a big company in a few years' time. And all that you need is the intellectual capital. So that is one. Second is that the society's expectations from the corporates are on the rise. Company boards today are expected to uphold the interest of all stakeholders and not just shareholders. And this is recognized even in the Indian company law today. Third, ESG concerns are getting bigger, and not only getting bigger, they're also guiding investments into markets and corporates. The ongoing pandemic, COVID-19, is a defining, moment in the history of our generation. It has further accentuated the ESG concerns. And that's my understanding, at least. So we are moving. If you look at the broader level, we seem to be moving from an era of, the capital formation or capitalism, so to say, to responsible, and I underline and emphasize, to responsible capital formation. Capital formation alone is not enough. We need to qualify the responsible capitalism or responsible capital formation is becoming important. And this, since I mentioned about COVID-19, it will also have, it will bring a renewed focus on companies for reporting on sustainability related issues. So, to my mind, in this backdrop, this report, which has been released earlier this month, or anywhere in the world, whatever ESG initiatives are being taken, they become more important and they become a very significant step in the ESG landscape. What are the main highlights of the report? Let me just move to the next section. So it's a fairly comprehensive work, and it aims to bring about substantial improvements in the area of sustainable reporting. And again, it sort of sets the stage for taking a leap for better disclosures in the ESG space in India. The report lays emphasis on disclosure of quantifiable information to allow for easy and timely measurement and comparability across companies and sectors. As compared to the existing DRR, which is more qualitative in nature, it brings in certain metrics, certain numbers, so which will be more concrete information for all stakeholders. Just to give you, for instance, the new format seeks specific information on emissions, recycled waste, safety-related incidents, and so on. The committee has suggested that BRR, the Business Responsibility Report, should be called the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, BRSR, with two sets of indicators. One is essential, which will be mandatory for all companies, and leadership, which would be voluntary. So aspirational sort of standards. And committee also proposes two formats for disclosures, comprehensive format and a light version. I will probably, leave it at that, and anybody can just read the report. It's publicly available. What is the way forward? So the committee has recommended that implementation of the reporting requirements should be done in a gradual and phased manner. And taking a cue from the report, as I earlier said, SEBI has quickly released a consultation paper on the revised disclosure requirements for BRR earlier this month. We are consulting with the listed companies. SEBI has proposed, while we are consulting at the same time, we have indicated to the corporate sector that to begin with, the new format for reporting may be adopted by top 1,000 companies on a voluntary basis. If you can, you please adopt it from this financial year itself, that is 2021. If you can't, you are free to use the old version, which is anyway available, and mandatorily from the financial year 21-22. So we want to give enough time. We recognize it would need time to make the necessary changes in your reporting system and so on. So 21-22, it becomes mandatory. 2021, it remains voluntary. Committee has also recommended that the reporting requirement should also be extended. This is a very important recommendation to unlisted companies above certain thresholds, of turnover and or paid up capital. And the committee has also suggested that the smaller unlisted companies which don't meet that threshold, they can use to begin with a light version of the format on a voluntary basis. So the idea is that the scope of disclosure in India, at least, that's what our vision is, should eventually extend to all businesses, irrespective of size or ownership, listed, unlisted, doesn't really matter, as responsible business conduct is not the obligation of a limited few. It should extend to everyone, but there has to be a glide path. So, at present, again, reflecting upon how it should play out, as of now, the BRSR formats which have been recommended, they are generic and they cut across all business sectors. But there may be some questions which are in the format that may be less relevant to some sectors, and while there may be others that may need to be added for some sectors. So going forward, I guess sector-specific BRSR format may have to be developed so that environmental and social performance of a particular sector can be assessed in depth. So another issue which we will encounter going forward would be that after we have adopted the BRSR format, there would be a need to review at reasonable intervals to improve and update them. So for implementation on the ground, to my mind, one is the regulatory push or the regulatory prescription. But will that suffice? I don't think so. It will not suffice. We, consciously had in the last 10 years a very light touch regime in this area. And therefore, if we wish to make a meaningful progress in this space, corporate sector will really have to step up and implement the revised ESG disclosure requirements in both letter and spirit. It is no longer just a checklist. We have to take it to the next level. We also need to develop an ecosystem to support and further the cause of business responsibility reporting. And I believe the setting up of this board is a very promising step in this direction. And as a guardian of reporting standards in this space, SRSP can play an instrumental role in the development of an orderly disclosure system. I am, very happy to be part of launch of this inaugural executive development program and the certificate course on enhanced corporate reporting. I think very, very welcome steps, both the programs, very welcome. So, this links again, as Dr. Singhal was mentioning earlier, capacity development. We need to focus on that. That is clearly a need of the hour. So that, I think this Institute of Chartered Accountants and this board can perhaps play a very active role there. So I would like to conclude, but before I conclude, Dr. Singhal was mentioning about social stock exchange. So maybe I'll take this opportunity to very briefly touch upon that. And it is in some ways related with the ESG space. So let me just take the liberty of getting into that a bit. So, I would really suggest to this board to also consider contributing to the need for developing the social audit profession in our country. A recent report on social stock exchange released by SEBI has, and I was very actively involved in that work. So it has made recommendations to enable raising of funds by both non-profits and for-profits through securities market. And I believe this is a unique initiative again. There are some social stock exchanges around the world, but we don't have a very successful model so far. So the report recommends one of the important pillars of the report is that it stands on the minimum standards for reporting on a social impact scorecard. So the disclosure is very key to the success of social stock exchange. And it not only requires reporting on a social impact scorecard, along with social audit. There is also an element of social audit of these disclosures for the entities who wish to utilize the social stock exchange platform for raising and listing on the exchange. So just to re-emphasize, social audit is a key component of the recommended framework and it needs to be developed as a professional service. So I'll just leave it at that, but happy to engage on this separately, I guess, with the board and the institute. So to conclude, during this decade, we've made some progress in the area of sustainability reporting, but we still have a long way to go. We are today standing on an important inflection point, if I can say, on this journey. And all the stakeholders will need to work together to make it a success and to take us, the corporate sector, the society, the country, to the next level in this space. We'll all have to work together. And I wish ICAI and SRSP Godspeed. Thanks for your time and attention.
Thank you, Sri Amarjit Singh Ji, the Executive Director of SEBI, for gracing the occasion with your gracious presence and enlightening the viewers by your words of wisdom. More specifically, dealing with the BRSR, social audit, social stock exchange, and coverage of the reportings to listed entity as well as to the unlisted entities. I'm sure that the insight on the government's and regulators' thought process, which was given, and revising the BRR format shared by Sri Amarjit Ji, and the outcomes that are expected to be achieved will be beneficial for all the professional brothers and sisters to gear up and upskill for the professional services in sustainability landscape. Members of the profession are keen to contribute towards the global agenda of improving the quality and the relevance of non-financial reporting, which is the need of our today. And as is suggested by Amarjit Ji, we at the ICAI as trying to be the leader in this particular area, and our leadership has already set up this SRSB for the benefit of our members and for dealing with the social audit, social social reporting standards, and so forth. With this, now I would like to invite Professor Marvin King, the Chairman Emirates International Integrated Reporting Council, to share his insight on adopting non-financial reporting substance. Mr. Marvin King is a senior counsel and former judge of the Supreme Court of South Africa. He is Professor Extraordinary at University of South Africa on Corporate Citizenship, Honorary Professor at the University of Pretoria and Visiting Professor at Rhodes University. He Chair Emirates of the International Integrated Reporting Council, Chairman Emirates of the Global Reporting Initiative GRI, and a member of the Private Sector Advisory Group to the World Bank on Corporate Governance. He chaired the United Nations Committee on the Governance and Oversight and was president of the Advertising Standards Authority for past 15 years. With this, I now request Professor Marvin King to address all of us.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and I am pleased to see many of my colleagues online today at this important occasion, and thank you for inviting me. Reporting is a means to discharge the duty of accountability by a board of a company. And there are two main clusters of reporting today. There's the financial cluster, and there is the ESG cluster. The financial cluster, we as directors and people involved in the corporate world have for years been talking, is it possible to get some kind of convergence in the financial cluster? In my judgment, it won't be possible for the next at least 20 or 30 years, simply because US GAAP is dependent on creatures of statute, and to change those creatures of statute, you need acts of Congress. And in the present political climate, that is not going to happen, in my judgment. The critical cluster, however, is the ESG cluster. We knew by the end of the 20th century, turning into the 21st century, that we had reached ecological overshoot, which is the technical term for the fact that companies in the main, individuals to a lesser extent, were using natural assets faster than nature was regenerating them. Clearly not a sustainable matter. And that was discussed at length at the United Nations when I chaired their governance and oversight, the United Nations Environmental Program and the United Nations Community on Trade and Development. And then it became necessary to try and develop guidelines to report on what had become 80% of the makeup of the market capitalization of some iconic companies on the great stock exchanges of the world, and only about 20% of the market cap were additives in a balance sheet according to financial reporting standards, be it IFRS or US GAAP. So, as one of the speakers have already said, as we moved into the 21st century, we came to the GFC in 2008. It was well known that sustainability reporting was becoming perhaps more important than financial reporting. In what sense? In the sense that we were reporting now on 80% of market cap, whereas the financials were only dealing with 20% of market cap. But financial reporting had become incomprehensible to the average user. It became more and more complicated simply because of financial failures, financial scandals, standards had to be changed. And even on an external audit, all of you know that the lead would say to you, no, on this aspect of revenue recognition, for example, we better discuss it with our technical partner who's focused on this issue. So with that complication, was one discharging one's duty of accountability by just doing a financial report? The answer was clearly in the negative. So it was in 2009 that IFAC called and discussed with me a meeting to be held at the United Nations. It was Geneva headquarters. And it was at that meeting, the World Bank was there and other important regulators. And under Chatham House rules, what we discussed was that financial reporting, although critical, was no longer sufficient to discharge the duty of accountability. I was able to say, as chairman of the United Nations, chairman of the GRI at the time, but although sustainability reporting was becoming more and more important in a resource-constrained world, with increasing population and demand for product, without numbers, it was meaningless. And that we were reporting in a manner that companies do not operate. Financial report in a silo, sustainability report in a silo. In reality, when companies are operating, the financial resources, intellectual resources, or capitals as they called in the IR framework, natural resources, plant and machinery, etc., together with the relationships between a company and its stakeholders, are integrated 24/7. And who are the most informed body of persons in the corporate structure? In my judgment, it is the board. The board meets, let's say, 6 times a year and is informed exactly what is happening inside the company. And it is the board's duty, in my judgment, to spend more time understanding the financial reports, understanding the sustainability reports. In the ESG cluster, there is a problem, a hurdle, which directors have to overcome. Because of the internet, there's a plethora of information that is coming into companies about ESG factors. And knowledge is getting lost in information. Also, there were 2 main standard setters. To me, the gold standard, GRI, and then Sustainability Accountancy Standards Board, focusing on industry-specific standards, because GRI also had moved from guidelines to standards. But the accountant today, when looking at this value creation process, which has replaced profit at any cost, and I use those words because of the Milton Friedman doctrine, the sole purpose of the company, and I paraphrase, is to make profit without deception. Even though during the 20th century it was being subsidized by society and the environment, which was a completely unsustainable model. So I have written that throughout the 20th century, we had unsustainable development. And we cannot sustain that in the 21st century. At the moment, we are cursed by coronavirus. And many economies were already struggling when the virus hit their shores. My own country, South Africa, our economy was on its knees when the virus struck. Directors today, in order to make sure their companies survive, have to think on an integrated basis. Integrated thinking has become absolutely critical to get that symphony of the use of resources and the relationship with its stakeholders. And have an integrated, compromising mindset with the stakeholders and the stakeholders of the company to ensure the survival of the company. And so some 5 months ago, I coined the word coronanomics. All directors today are steering their companies in a sea of two crises, economic and the virus. And directors cannot forget that they are in the sea of coronanomics. The relevance of ESG in that situation is obviously critical. So whilst we have to acknowledge that in the short term, and I'm talking about the next 18 months to 2 years, directors will be very focused on survival of their companies because of the adverse impact of the restrictions brought about by the government regulations to try and stem the flow of the virus. Exacerbating already depressed or economies in recession, we can't forget that the duty of a company, because of the importance of the ESG factors, is to make sure that they make decisions in the long-term health of the company, which would be for the benefit, long-term benefit of all the stakeholders of the company, including the shareholders. The concept of the primacy of the shareholder has generally been widely rejected and replaced by this value creation process, value preservation, value erosion sometimes, because how the company makes its money could result in erosion of the resources used by the company. The accountant, called the chief financial officer, today is dealing with that value creation. And as many of you will know, I have written to say, more appropriately today, he's a value officer because he or she is dealing with this value creation process. And it becomes critical in this coronanomics world. But we cannot forget that Similac Semel, at the same time, the dark cloud of climate change is above us, and the clouds are getting darker and darker. So directors have to be trapeze artists because they have to focus on these short-term issues, especially on the ESG factors in a resource-constrained world, but with increasing demand for product, but cannot forget the long-term health of the company and therefore have to build into the business model and the strategies of the company the SDGs pertinent to the business of the company, and make sure that the company is ready if it survives and the economies get back from survive to thrive, that they are ready to deal with climate change, which will be critical and the most critical financial risk that companies will have to face. We can wear masks, we can isolate, we can social distance to try and avoid COVID. None of those remedies will help us when climate changes as it will be. And so from a relevance point of view, in value creation, it's very important that we look at it from inputs to outcomes. ESG, there's some metrics for environmental and social, how the companies be dealing with it, but governance is another issue. In the capital markets of the world today, due diligence is done not only of financial due diligence for a bond being placed in the company for bidding by the financial institutions of the world, the asset owners. They do a due diligence on the ESG factors. How has a company dealt with how it makes its money and what impacts it has on the three critical dimensions for sustainable development, the economy, society, and the environment? How has it dealt with that? Are there negative impacts on the environment? If so, does the company have a strategy to eradicate or ameliorate those negative impacts? If they're positive, how are they going to enhance those in the years ahead? And so these things have become very critical in the business world and very relevant. So on the question of the quality and relevance of ESG, governance has become absolutely important. But governance, in a lot of countries has become rules-based and tick box, mindless grudge compliance. It's important that a modern approach is taken to governance, and it should be mindful and outcomes-based to fit in with the reporting landscape of outcomes-based reporting and outcomes-based SDGs. And so in doing an audit of ESG factors on the due diligence in the capital markets of the world today, those doing the audit and the financial due diligence look for quality in governance, not quantity. And it's important that you ensure that you actually are seen to be achieving these critical outcomes, value creation in a sustainable manner, trust and confidence by the community in which your company operates, adequate and effective controls with informed oversight and effective leadership, which means an acceptance that the company is an incapacitated artificial person and that the corporate leaders are the mind and conscience of the company. And they have to ensure that the ESG factors are dealt with on a relevant basis in our resource-constrained world. I just conclude by drawing to your attention that consideration is being given in the United Kingdom to making reporting under the TCFD mandatory. As I speak to you, Tim Moen, and I'm sure Charles Tilley will take this further, we are fortunate that SASB and GRI are talking about some commonality between the two. What the outcome will be, I don't know. Tim will be more informed about this than me, and maybe Charles is also involved in that. Maybe they'll mention it in their talks. But imagine if SASB and GRI can converge on standards, for example. The doubt in the minds of preparers, which standard should I use? The clutter and confusion being created in the ESG cluster can be reduced and diluted. So the change and the convergence of these two great standard setters is critical, as well as the TCFD. Of course, the winning formula would be a merger of TCFD, GRI, and SASB. So you have effectively one major standard setter on the ESG factors. But time will tell whether that will happen. But I conclude by saying this, that the London Stock Exchange and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange have got together, and they are shortly to issue a socially responsible index to guide them on the relevance of reporting or what providers of capital will be looking for in making decisions as to whether they should or should not invest in a company or its financial instruments or its equity until and unless an ESG due diligence is done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marvin. We are extremely thankful to you for your views and this new term, coronomics, which you have coined. Of course, we would like to know more from you about that at a later point of time. And your thought about that SASB and GRI standards converging is also a welcome thought. And I can assure you that in the times to come, Sustainability Reporting Standard Board or SRSB will also be a name which is equivalent to SASB and GRI. That much I can assure you from the ICAI side. Thanks very much for taking our time. And I really commends your vision and efforts in the area of sustainability reporting. I also had an opportunity to hear you when there was a joint program of CII and ICAI on the exposure draft of the integrated reporting framework. I now take the privilege of introducing our next panelist, Mr. Charles Chilly, CEO, IIRC. He is the Chief Executive Officer of IIRC, spearheading the drive towards a cohesive, holistic corporate reporting system and building awareness and adoption of integrated thinking and reporting globally. Charles has been central to the IIRC and the development of integrated reporting since its inception, having chaired the IIRC's technical task force, the group responsible for the development of the IIR framework. We are all very keen to hear his deliberation on recent development in sustainability and integrated reporting. Over to you, Charles.
Well, thank you very much indeed, and good evening to everybody in India. I'm so delighted to be involved in this webinar. Unfortunately, certainly in the Isle of Wight, the quality of Wi-Fi is not that good. So I hope you'll excuse me if I actually turn off my camera so that I can guarantee that you'll be able to hear what I have to say.
No problem.
But well, you can hear I'm still here. I'd like to start by thanking the Sustainability Reporting Standards Board of the Indian Institute of Chartered Accountants of India for the opportunity to contribute to this webinar. It's great to be in such esteemed company, many old friends and colleagues who I've worked with over many years, and also having the ICAI President, Mr. Atul Gupta, involved, who is, of course, an IRC council member. And it would also, I think, just to say, having heard from the earlier speakers on the great progress that is being made in India, and I'm delighted to hear that and to see that progressing. And obviously, we're very keen to support that in whatever way we can. Now, turning to our framework, well, it provides a vehicle for sustainability reporting, i.e. ESG reporting, but it's a much broader role than that. It's to demonstrate business responsibility and how an organisation is creating, or for that matter, eroding value in the short, medium, and long term. And I think the issue of business responsibility is absolutely critical. Clearly, there is a responsibility for investors in terms of a long-term successful company, and that's really very important indeed in the context of all of us as pensioners as well. But it's that long-term success is only achieved if we're creating value for all the key stakeholders of any business. And I think the current COVID crisis has demonstrated the critical importance of resilient companies. Marvin talked about survival. Resilience is key, but it's also important that companies are agile. They're absolutely focused upon customer needs. They understand the importance of their supply chains, the importance of the key employees, and of course, reputation. And that reputation is very much driven by responsibility to society and the environment. Now, if I look at what's happening around the world, integrated reporting is gathering momentum globally. We're just in the process of celebrating our 10th anniversary, and it's the norm, both as integrated reporting or a substantive equivalent in many parts of the world, including in Japan, Australia, Africa, South Africa in particular, UK, and many other countries around Asia and Europe. There are some 2,000 companies that have adopted the framework, and some 40 stock exchanges signposting integrated reporting in their ESG guidance. And I think, and I don't know if Tim will refer to this as well, but the World Economic Forum and the International Business Council met last Friday, and I heard over the weekend that that was a very successful meeting with the support for progress in developing what I would see as a comprehensive corporate reporting system, particularly with the focus on ESG, with the 140 CEOs of the International Business Council supporting the work of the standard setters and framework setters, CDP, CDSB, GRI, ourselves at the IRC and SASB, to progress to that comprehensive system. And of course, we're also seeing much more generally a lot of initiatives. Marvin referred to some of those, but also what we're seeing in Europe, announcement of the IFRS looking at how they're going to widen their remit, and also the positioning of IOSCO in that regard as well. And then we've obviously heard a great deal of what is happening in India, and the progress that's been achieved over the last 10 years. From an integrated reporting perspective, we were delighted that the Securities and Exchange Board of India in 2017 suggested that integrated reporting should be adopted in terms of companies producing their business responsibility reports, and it was good to hear that that's now been widened to business responsibility and sustainability reports. Over 70 companies in India are already producing integrated reports. These include the Tata Group, in particular Tata Steel, Hindustan Unilever and Yes Bank, and I think they're all very good examples and worth looking at to see how companies are producing their reports. And Mr. UK Sinha, an ex-chairman of the Securities and Exchange Board of India, is on our board, and then we have support of many in India on our council, for which we're very grateful, including, of course, the support of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. We recently, we are in the process at the moment of consulting on our integrated reporting framework to understand what else is needed to ensure that that framework is really meeting the needs of the key stakeholders today. We've held two very successful framework review roundtables in India. We're delighted with those. We're also close to agreement on the Institute becoming a training partner for integrated reporting, and my congratulations to the Institute on the programs that you're launching here today. They both look most impressive, and I very much hope that as training partners we can align ourselves to those programs as well. Now the key features of or unique features of the integrated reporting framework is that it is comprehensive. It's very much principle-based, but it's a multi-capital framework. It's focused on all the value drivers for a business. It doesn't prescribe standards per se, but of course they are absolutely critical. GRI standards, SASB standards, TCFD in their focus, they're all consistent with our framework and very important in terms of how a company evidences the progress it's making in terms of its particular progress in terms of driving value creation. And the foundation of the integrated report and is the business model and those drivers of value. And the key issues for the board is to understand the needs of the key stakeholders and the opportunities and risks that the business faces as these change. And clearly there is a huge amount of change going on at the present time, going back to that agility point I made earlier. And critical to that is understanding the external environment, to have a strategic focus and a future orientation on what is going to be material to those value drivers and how your business model is changing. And it's also important in terms of developing an integrated report that it's reliable, it's complete, it's the information provided is consistent and comparable, and also I think we're going to see, an increasing level of assurance, and this is something that the IAASB is addressing at the present time, so that it's building greater trust in integrated reports. And my own personal experience is that preparing an integrated report has helped me to run my business better. And that doesn't, whatever the size, the whole concept of thinking through your business model, how you're creating value, really has helped certainly me, both as a CEO and as a non-executive director. It helps in that integrated thinking, and it also provides a framework to address the governance needs of the organisation. So what we're looking at is a holistic perspective on the value creation that goes well beyond, if you like, the traditional annual report, and addresses the much wider and important elements of what a company is, how it's creating value, and how it is using its resources effectively, and also having an understanding of how it's potentially eroding and destroying value as well. And in terms of that integrated thinking, connectivity is one of the fundamental concepts of the reporting. Understanding what is a material impact on one capital potentially has a knock-on impact on other. And as Marvin was saying earlier, there are so many interconnecting parts, and the board is, and the directors are having to act as trapeze artists. A great term there, I think, Marvin. But to give you an example, if you can easily see training as being a cost, but it's not. The most important thing is to think about actually how it's going to create value in terms of your people running your business better going forward into the future. And Marvin referenced earlier the concept of a chief value officer rather than a CFO, and I think that is certainly, I think, the way things are going, and I'm sure that Stathis Gould will reference work that IFAC, AICPA and the IRC have done together recently in terms of producing a paper on precisely that topic, and how the finance function needs to develop in the 21st century, and the role specifically of the CFO and that widening responsibility. I think also if we think about how business is responsible with others, particularly with governments, in terms of delivering the SDGs, we've produced some, again, very important work, I think, with IFAC, the ACCA, and others, in terms of how the SDGs and the value creation align with the framework. And I would recommend anybody to look at the report that was produced in that area, because clearly what we're looking for is the concept of responsible capitalism. And so to conclude, I think we're in a period of significant progress, whether we're talking about what's in India, or globally. I see integrated reporting as being the framework which enables the connectivity of all of the capitals or resources a company needs in terms of driving its success over time. And you say often that framework is described as the roof sitting on top of the various standards. And what we're ultimately trying to achieve through our reporting and, more importantly, the integrated thinking is the ability for companies to focus upon responsible business and sustainable business. So with that, I would thank you and look forward to hearing the rest of this webinar. And thank you very much indeed for involving me.
Thank you, Mr. Charles Tilly, for your thought-provoking address on the recent developments in sustainability and integrated reporting, even mentioning UK Sinha, who is on your board, his contributions towards the sustainability reporting and the integrated reportings. The corporate reporting landscape is transforming, and the focus is increasing, as you said, on the value creation, sustainability, and environmental, social, and governance factors. I think this all will help in building the capacity of all the fraternity of ours. For this, now I would like to invite Mr. Timothy J. Mohin, the Chief Executive Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, to give his distinguished view on increasing the momentum of sustainability reporting. Timothy J. Mohin is the Chief Executive of GRI, developer of the world's most widely used sustainability reporting standards, a veteran in the field of corporate sustainability reporting. Tim is responsible for driving GRI's mission to empower the decision that creates social, environmental, and economic benefits for everyone. With this, over to Mr. Tim Mohin.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you to ICAI and all of my fellow speakers today. It's just a pleasure to be with you. I think we're at an incredibly important time for the practice of corporate reporting generally, but as Marvin and Charles were saying, the incorporation of sustainability factors into this practice. My sense is, without resorting to hyperbole, we're at a moment now where we could actually change the face of capitalism entirely to align with the needs of people and the planet. And I think that's an incredible place to be. I think the real important thing to start off with, as I'm speaking to a group of primarily accountants, is my background. I am not an accountant. I'm an environmental scientist. I come from the sustainability side of the equation. And in my last 20 years of work before joining GRI, I worked in large corporations and watched the change happen within those corporations. That change was really about incorporating some values into business. And why that change happened was because primarily two things. One, internally, people and companies started to care deeply about people and the planet. But also externally, the expectations continued to grow. And now we're seeing what I call the mainstreaming of environmental, social, and governance or sustainability factors into corporate reporting. And that mainstreaming is going to be what truly evolves the practice into something that I think will, again, change the world. So those are the introductory remarks that I wanted to make. I do want to start off with the end in mind. And I heard Marvin say this and others say this, that, it's reporting is a means to an end. It's not the end itself. It is what you do with the report that is really, really where the change takes place. And I've seen this in the companies that I've worked for. When you go through a process, you basically evaluate what are the priorities, you select a priority, you select objectives, you select KPIs, you go through an entire management cycle, and at the end of the management cycle is reporting. But reporting is simply an accountability mechanism. It is reflective of that entire sequence and process that goes on within a company, and then can help guide the stakeholders and investors in that company. And that's really what we're talking about today. So it does have huge power to change how companies operate, but it is not in and of itself the action. It is the reporting of the action. And I think it's important that we note that. The other thing I want to mention is obviously we're living in some very challenging times right now. The pandemic has us all kind of locked down and working from home. We've also seen the incredible dislocation in the economy and the very sad impacts to many, many people around the world. And I think that we have to recognize that and respect that and how that has changed the world around us, but also how it has changed the practice that we're discussing today. If anything, the pandemic has showed us that reporting on sustainability matters is a very dynamic practice indeed. Often we try to relate sustainability reporting to financial reporting, but it is different. We're talking about human rights. We're talking about the environment. We're talking about people and human capital and all of these things. And often we get into this sort of false debate over what are those issues in that very wide range of topics that are financially material to a company. And what should we select to put in those financial reports? Well, it turns out that the pandemic has taught us one thing, which is that is a very dynamic border. That unless companies are looking beyond what could be financially material in their next quarter or their next year, then they're probably missing some of the biggest both risks and opportunities for their business. So as Charles likes to say, it's not about integrated reporting, it's about integrated thinking. It's about thinking about these important issues that could impact a business going forward. And if anything we've learned that the pandemic has taught us, it is that lesson alone, that financial materiality can be very dynamic and change overnight. And one of the other things we're seeing is that businesses are now starting to recognize that one of the key drivers in their success, in their strategy, is to have a purpose at their core. Many of you probably know Paul Pullman, and he recently is quoted as saying, businesses that are built on longer-term, multi-stakeholder models have a strong purpose at their core, will be much better placed to recover from this coronavirus crisis that we're in. So I think we now have a joint opportunity to reset the way we do business. We now have an opportunity to rethink, rebuild, and innovate. And I'm very pleased to see the report that's been issued in terms of how companies in India can specifically report on these matters and specifically show that they all have this longer term integrated thinking and this purpose at their heart. So I also want to kind of take a moment to talk about GRI. You know, GRI, and I was so pleased to hear Marvin say this, is kind of the gold standard, if you will. GRI has been around for more than 20 years. And I have seen in my career it grow from kind of a niche practice, more of an activist initiative, if you will, to now a practice that is adopted by more than 90% of S&P 500 companies. And I just saw a report last week from India which showed that many companies that are reporting are frankly using the GRI standards to report. The number was 89% are using GRI to report in India, which again is another indication of how GRI has grown over the years and gone from guidelines to standards in this overall mainstreaming that I've talked about before. Another statistic to give you is we have seen that our standards, and Marvin mentioned this, we've gone from guidelines to standards, were downloaded about 200,000 times last year alone. which represents about a 50% year-over-year increase. So we're seeing this from around the world. We're also seeing policy change around the world. Many of you are probably following what's going on in the European Union. They have announced that they will revise their non-financial reporting directive, and that is a directive that has been out for several years. But the results of that directive have shown that reporting can vary widely in terms of quality, consistency, comparability. And so as the European Union tries to build back better from the pandemic crisis under their new Green Deal, they have prioritized a revision of the non-financial reporting directive. And that work is just now getting kicked off, and we would expect to see some policy guidance from that work in the new year. We're also seeing that the dominant global financial standard setter, IFRS, is considering taking on the role of sustainability standards as well. And there is a lot of sort of public discussion about this, but also I think there's going to be some formal moves on the IFRS in the relatively near future to open a consultation of what they should do in this space. So a lot is going on. GRI has over the years continued to stay abreast of all of these policy moves. And as we see policy growing rapidly, we keep track of this in a report that we call Carrots and Sticks, and that we've launched recently in July. This is a continuation of a report that we've done for many years now. But one of the headlines that I'd like to share with you is that we are now seeing 168 policies in 67 countries that now reference or require GRI, the use of GRI standards specifically. So we are seeing sort of a convergence around these standards, and it's very, very important. But again, I think that the comments made by my colleagues Marvin and Charles are really along the lines of how much of this reporting practice will go to mainstream in those mainstream corporate reports, the financial accounts, and then also how much are we going to see in terms of mandatory reporting going forward. So these are the main issues that I wanted to share with you today. I do think that I want to conclude with a couple of remarks. GRI standards continue to be updated, as you've mentioned. They are modular now, and so we are able to update them one at a time. Late last year, we issued our first new standard in quite some time, which was on tax payments to governments. And many people have said, well, why are you looking at taxes? Well, paying your fair share of taxes is a foundational and fundamental way to help on developing the needed programs and processes around sustainability. And we've seen many, many cases where those payments have not been made. So we have developed the first of its kind global standard on country by country disclosure of tax payments to governments. This year, we also launched our updated standards on waste. We also have a public consultation going on with the universal standards on how to determine materiality and incorporating human rights related GRI standards. And I invite you all to participate in that public consultation, which is ongoing now. And finally, we are looking at sector standards. Pilot projects right now are underway for oil and gas, which is out for consultation. And we're looking at agriculture next in the pipeline, and we have several in our public work program that you can see online. Then I want to just briefly touch on this harmonization point that has been raised by several folks. GRI has been around for a long time, as I've said, and we have the largest following, the largest global adoption, the largest connection to policymakers and capital markets around the world, which is all wonderful. But of course, there are others. And Marvin talked about this specifically, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, or SASB, which has garnered quite a bit of attention and support, especially from large asset managers around the world. And I just want to say one thing. We are working together. There is no zero-sum game. It's not one versus the other. It's how we can work together. And we're working together with Charles's group, the Integrated Reporting Council, CDP, and others. And frankly, we are just getting started. The world does not need more confusion. More confusion just leads to wasted energy and wasted effort, and the world does not have time for such wasted energy. So I just wanted to make that point. And then kind of to wrap up, I just wanted to, again, sort of go back to where I started. We're on the threshold of something really beautiful, and there's lots of indications of this. Just in Q1 alone, we saw massive increases in investment in ESG funds, more than double over the past year. And I think this is just one indication of many indications that ESG reporting, sustainability reporting is going mainstream. It is aligning capital to the needs of the world, and I think that is a wonderful thing. And then just to close, I just want to close where I started with, which is it's not about reporting, it's what we do with the information. We have to take stock of where we are with the pandemic. We must be vigilant, and companies have to look long term. I also think that policy mandates and the work that you're doing in India to try and make it clear, consistent, comparable, and high quality information is absolutely essential for the movement that I'm talking about. So we all have made this a focus of our careers. I think that's incredibly important and laudable. And by working together, we will see this change where sustainability and business will become two sides of the same coin. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Thankful to you for taking out time, and I really like this line that instead of integrated reporting, let's have integrated thinking. And of course, GRI is gold standard. There's no doubt about it. Before I move on to set this gold, I am happy to announce that the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Shri Gyaneshwar ji is also with us. Gyanendra ji is also has seen so far this program, which is on the business reporting and sustainability reporting, business responsibility and sustainability reporting. MCA, to which our honorable Joint Secretary G.K. Singh ji is an integral part. MCA is the body which has prepared this new BRSR. So MCA is the pioneer, and I was fortunate to get his 5 minutes on this program. So I must appreciate the efforts of Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and sir, I would like to share with you that this program has become a truly, you being there, and he also at the Benefit Security Exchange Board. Then we have Marvin King, who's the Chairman Emeritus IARC. We had Charles Tilley, who's the CEO of the IARC. We have Tim Mohin, who's the CEO of Chief Executive of GRI. We also have Sethis Gold from IFAC, and then Shikhar Jain from CII. So this is becoming a truly global program and a regulator and standard setter program. I have no words to express my thanks that you agreed to take out these 5 minutes. And sir, today we have also launched 2 programs, a 5-day executive development program on the BRSR, Business Responsibility and Sustainability report which you have recently issued, and a 12-day certificate course on enhanced corporate reporting, again, which is relating to sustainability. Sir, before I hand over the mic to the Director IFAC, Director Advocacy, Sethis Gold from IFAC, if we can have your views for a few minutes on anything relating to this, that what was your thought process, or what are the benefits that you see from this, or what is the way forward? We'll be extremely delighted to have your views, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for inviting me, distinguished guests, participants. It's really a momentous occasion, and we are starting a new journey. And always in the ministry, we say that these 3 professional bodies are extended arm of the ministry. So they are there for the corporate governance. And when we are discussing about the new framework of the corporate governance, where we talk about responsible business conduct, human rights and business. So role of Indian Institute of Chartered Accountants is very important because they have the footprint throughout the India. They closely interact with the companies. They guide the companies in improving the corporate governance standards. So before we come where we are, I think we have to also go back to the history, how we have reached to this point. So we have started our journey about the responsible business conduct in 2009, where we came with the voluntary guidelines for, we came with the guidelines or report on corporate governance. That was the 2009. And when the whole world was discussing about the UNGP, United Nations Guiding Principle, and that principle talks about protect, respect, and the remedy. So the protect is how the government is aligning its rule, its act, rules, legal framework to ensure that the business also respects the human rights, and whatever is the government framework of the law, business has to adopt it. That is, business respect the human rights framework. And third one is remedy. If there is a violation, what kind of a remedy is available? So 2011 June, this was announced by United Nations Human Rights Council. At the same time, Ministry of Corporate Affairs was working on it, and we came with the national voluntary guidelines on social, environmental, and economic responsibility. If you match this social, environmental, and economic responsibility, this is nothing but what we talk about ESG. So here we had at the time, we made it voluntary, but we were very conscious of the fact that business is not only for profit, it is for planet, it is for people also. So 3P idea was born as a regulator in 2011 itself. There is a difference of 1 month. UNGP was declared in June, and this national voluntary guidelines was published and released by the ministry in July. So our journey has started from that point, and what we did from 2011 to 2013, I will quickly sum up. Then SEBI, as a market regulator, realized that there is a need of incorporating whatever has been mentioned in national voluntary guidelines. It talks about 9 principles, and if you match those 9 principles, it starts from ethical business, looking after your value chain, employees, weaker sections, human rights and business, inclusive, equitable business, inclusive business, environment. So whatever debate we have at this moment throughout the world under the framework of business and human rights, it's all covered. So with a different name, this debate started, and SEBI was quick enough to implement this framework for business reporting for top 100 companies as per market capitalization in 2012. They increased it to 500 companies in 2015. Now they have decided they are going to increase this reporting framework for 1,000 companies. So this is one framework. Then we had the Companies Act in 2013. We came with the Companies Act, where we talked about social responsibility of the business. And here, some way, it is implicit. We were very conscious of the fact we were trying to redefine the business philosophy, which started in 2009. And we came very categorically, if you read 166 I3 subsection 3, where we talk about director's responsibility. I think I have not found anywhere any parallel this kind of emphatic wording where we say that directors have, as a fiduciary duty, they are responsible to society, community, environment, along with the shareholders. Here, shareholder comes at the third place. So we were conscious of the fact that business is for the purpose, and business cannot be sustainable, business cannot be inclusive unless it takes about, it some way caters to the need of the stakeholders. So this whole debate of shareholder to stakeholder, or in the management terms, we say Milton Friedman to Freeman, shareholder to stakeholder. This journey, we were very conscious, and from the very beginning, we were of the view as a regulator, business is for the stakeholder. So first was a voluntary approach where we were trying to nudge with the business CEOs and saying that we want to be sustainable in long run. You have to some way start thinking as a part of business philosophy, as a part of your business strategy, that these philosophies should be included in your business strategy. And 2015 was the last where 500 companies, we said that they will report on this BRR. And after that, there were lots of development happening. And what were the development? The development were all those development, Paris Convention. Then we had the UNGP. Then we have SDG. We realized that we need to revisit our national voluntary guidelines. That we did it in 2019. And we came with national guidelines for responsible business conduct, and where we have addressed all such issues. And what we decided that it should be a comprehensive approach to deal with the business issues. And all those 9 principles have been updated in terms of international discourse, international development. The need was felt that earlier our business responsibility reporting framework needs to be updated, needs to be revisited. That we also have done it. And we have on 11th of August, we have came with BRSR. And here, the most important thing is we now say sustainability is the key. So business responsibility reporting and sustainability, it has to go together. That is the future for civilization. That is the mandate for the business. Right now, we have reached to the stage where it is no longer an optional. If you want to be sustainable in the long run, we have to take care of our stakeholder. We have to take care of the environment. We have to take care of the sustainability. There cannot be a better way of expressing all of us as a citizen of the global society. We have seen how the COVID has given us a better appreciation of the environment, better appreciation of the carbon emission norms. So we have, throughout the world, we have different norms for capturing non-financial reporting. And non-financial reporting is as important as the financial reporting. And this is, I think, somewhere one can talk about that non-financial reporting is much more important because financial reporting is given. So if any investor is trying to do due diligence, the investor has to go beyond the financial reporting to find out whether the business will be sustainable in long run. We have GRI, we have IR, we have CDP, we have UN Compact. So lots of reporting formats are there. So our approach was to incorporate most of the good things, whatever is happening outside, so that we have a comprehensive framework. If some Indian businessman is reporting in UK on Slavery Act, he has to add certain things. If he is reporting somewhere else, he has to add certain things. Basic framework, basic data, basic information we are capturing. This report is different from other report because I had the chance to participate in United Nations Human Rights Council. I have gone through many of this national action plan, but nowhere we have measurable targets. So what we are trying to do in the implementation of this BRR, we have made 2 kinds of indicator: leadership indicator or essential indicator. In essential indicator, we are trying to measure everything, whether it's a labor, environment, women, everything, whatever we discuss, the framework has been given. Leadership indicator is more like aspirational. We have also made it very clear that at this moment, we are thinking of also extending this reporting to also unlisted companies, because they are very big unlisted companies. These unlisted companies may be different in terms of mobilizing resources, but they have to also report on this changing paradigm of corporate governance. That is another thing. We have made 2 kinds of report. One is the comprehensive report, another is a light report. Light report, we are thinking that it will be more for the voluntary, on the voluntary basis. So I'm very excited to hear that now this dialogue has been taken to the logical end. What was required was to train the mindset, change the mindset, do much more of advocacy, do much more of sensitization. And this program of chartered accountants is dot on the line. You are not only going to create awareness in your executive educational program, you are starting a course. Because when we talk to the business organization, they say, where are the professionals who will help us in understanding this new discourse? Where are the professionals who will help us in filling this data? So you are dot on the line. That was the need of the hour. And what you are doing, That is, the world business philosophy is changing. We have lots of international gates. They must be following the CEOs roundtable, which always happens in USA. And last year, 2019, when they had the CEOs roundtable, they have changed the purpose of the business. They also talk about stakeholders. They also talk about now the business leaders will go back and try to align their business philosophy in terms of the new discourse of corporate governance. Even the Davos conference has also endorsed the same view. We have G20 meeting also where the sustainability is big issue. So what I'm saying that now it's a foregone conclusion. Business has to be sustainable. Business has to be inclusive. And how we can nudge the business by doing all kinds of advocacy program, creating the required critical mass of the trained manpower, and this effort what Chartered Accountant Institute has started. This is required, and we need much more this kind of efforts from other organizations. And as a regulator, we are very clear, if government of India is thinking to achieve 5 trillion economy target, no way we can achieve other than embarrassing or adopting the international best practices. That is a responsible business conduct, which is a sustainable, because when our companies are going abroad, they have to also align their business strategy reporting to the international framework. So if we have the ambition of 5 trillion economy, if we have a mission of having the global footprint, this is the need of the hour. So all of us, we have to work together. We have to help each other. And the time will come when each business will come around, not only business reporting, they will come around business responsibility policy. So what I mean is policy has to now come first in the drawing room of the boards. They have to start discussing business responsibility policy. Then the reporting will come. So with this, I will not take much time. You have lots of guests. They are waiting for their turn. I just wanted to quickly share our views as a regulator. We are committed to engage with the civil society, the professional organization, and our international partners to further this debate that business is for a stakeholder. It is not for shareholders. Only way business can survive if business is inclusive and sustainable. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. First of all, for this report. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir, and thank you for appreciating the ICAI efforts and to ensure sustainability, sir. We will hold this program only online. All the material that will be given will be an e-book type, so that we are really contributing to the sustainability. So thanks from my Vice Chairman, Durgesh Kabraji, as well. We now move on to Mr. Setis Gold, Director Advocacy, ICAI, to share his views on this very important topic of the sustainability, and we would like to hear what he thinks. And just to introduce that, Setis heads up the development of international services for professional accountants working in business and industry at ICAI. A key element of his work is developing thought leadership and guidance in support of finance professionals and their roles, facilitating sustainable organizational performance. And he was there in our global webinar also, and we are in touch with regard to the development of an assurance standard on the greenhouse gas emissions as well. So we are really thankful to you, Setis, and over to you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. That's very kind. I believe I have some slides, if it's possible to place those up. Thank you very much. You can go to the second slide. So it's a pleasure to be with you all today. I'm talking to you about the critical role of accountants in sustainability and integrated reporting, and trying to help you support your esteemed members of the ICAI and the work of the Sustainability Reporting Standards Board. So I've got quite a lot to get through today in really talking about how accountants can support integrated and sustainability reporting and ultimately more sustainable business. If you would like to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I think it's just helpful to see and think about what a future fit accountant really needs to be focused upon. And this is, I really think about this now in the context, the corporate governance context that Marvin outlined earlier, which is really an accountant needs to deliver the information boards, management and operations need to help them steer towards and communicate about long-term value creation and the impacts that the organization, that the business is having on the world around it. And enabling confidence and credibility in the information so it can be used reliably, consistently, comparably for decision making and for reporting. So to me, this is really what the future fit accountant needs to be able to contribute to this area and to sustainable economic success. Next slide, please. So what we've heard today is accounting for value creation in today's world is a much broader undertaking than what it was in the 20th century, when accountants supported the traditional value model of historic earnings, past financial performance, and a narrow view of risk and opportunity. So this model, quite rightly, has lost favor with investors, with regulators, with stakeholders, and society. So we have this shift from a shareholder value focus to a stakeholder and broader non-financial capital lens. And this raises very important questions about our role as accountants and how we contribute to value creation. So to contribute to this wider agenda, I think as accountants, we need to ensure we're not caught in the old paradigm in which financial performance and returns to shareholders are the primary measure of performance and success. Our role in business and in advisory and as assurance providers needs to evolve with the world that is changing around us. And this wider value creation agenda is really at the very heart of integrated thinking and reporting, which is about driving better decisions towards stakeholder value, achieving sustainability outcomes, and being able to communicate value creation. So this whole rethinking value creation agenda is driving what we do as CFOs, as finance teams, and as assurance providers. This means providing insights on how value is created today and in the future beyond the financials. It means going beyond reporting, so we enable a value creating business and a business model that is resilient and sustainable. It means comprehensively tracking performance and value creation and providing confidence in the information and in management through assurance. And this is really, I think, our broader mandate in value creation and protection. If you would kindly go to the next slide, please. So, as Charles mentioned, we produced a report recently with the IRC and the AICPA CIMA to really explore the CFO and finance function role in this broader value creation model. I think it's very important to really start to think about, as accountants, what is driving value and impact in our businesses. And of course, one of the critical things is that 80% of value is now represented by intangibles and ESG and sustainability factors. So the question for us as accountants is, what is this 80% of value? What needs to be captured? What needs to be measured, quantified, and monetized? And we really are looking at this through three perspectives, covering book, business or enterprise value, and then societal value, which is shown in the diagram. And you can find these in the report on the Rethinking Value Creation website at IFAC. So in terms of measurement, metrics and KPIs, obviously as accountants, we need to be capturing the key business value drivers and the related opportunity and risk factors that affect the prospects for future net cash inflows into the company. And then we have to think about how we connect the financial value drivers to the relevant non-financial areas which relate to the various forms of capital and resources that we depend on and that we impact as a company. And they're very well captured by the IRC's 6 capitals model. So within that, accountants, I think, will generally be familiar with the conventional sort of performance and value drivers that relate to finance, operations, and customers. I think this whole value creation space has to incorporate the relevant intangibles that just drive our competitive advantage, our strategic value, such as people, intellectual property, data, R&D, and innovation. And of course, it has to capture the ESG and sustainability factors that are used by investors and others and represent the opportunities and risks to long-term value creation. But I think it's very important to remember that when it comes to societal value, a lot of these metrics and KPIs only track the private gains and the losses for the organization and not the broader impacts that we're having on society and stakeholders around us, which is very much where GRI comes in. It's very important, therefore, to also understand the positive and negative impacts that we have on customers, employees, communities, and the environment to provide this wider perspective on societal value. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But the management of value, I think, really now is about us as accountants having a long-term value focus, dealing with multifaceted value drivers, financial, non-financial, or pre-financial, as they're increasingly known, the link to strategy in the business model, and having a forward-looking focus. So this is a complete shift in mindset for many accountants and a great opportunity, I think, for the profession. If you would kindly go to the next slide. I just wanted to very quickly touch on the issue of value creation and impact. And obviously, we talk a lot about value creation as part of integrated reporting, and we talk a lot about impact as part of GRI, and these are both compatible, but I think it's very important that we're able to distinguish and understand how these connect to each other. And I think if you think about the diagram on the previous slide, connecting those three value perspectives is really about bringing together value creation and impact. So by incorporating all the relevant aspects of value creation and sustainable development, we can incorporate factors that materially affect our financial performance and our future cash flows now as we understand it, but also the impacts that may not be affecting financial materiality today, but ultimately can really affect our license to operate and our reputation. And this is our contribution to society, what we're doing in relation to the SDGs as a company. So what's happening in the era of Corona and COVID-19 is a great example. We can make short-term decisions today that materially affect our financial performance, such as if we're a retailer stopping paying property rentals or renegotiating rentals on properties, etc. But these can actually quite quickly damage our reputation and our potential for future value creation. So it's important to consider what the connection between value creation and an impact is when we're thinking about reporting to boards, management, and operations on the performance and the prospects of a company. Next slide, please. So in terms of what we do as accountants, we are enhancing decisions and we're enhancing reporting. We really are thinking about providing relevant information and relevant insights to enhance reporting and decision-making in different areas. So we have measurement and reporting, of course, internal and external, risk management, business and financial planning, and how we incorporate these non-financial value drivers and priorities into our budgeting and forecasting, which is critical. How we incorporate these priorities and factors into our capital and project investment appraisal decisions, so that the key criteria for making decisions are not just financial, and how we prioritize those other non-financial areas in our financing, equity and debt decisions, and in our external reporting and communications. And ultimately, I think what's really important is integrated and robust management information really is essential to better external reporting and communication. Next slide, please. So just in terms of thinking about the role of accountants, obviously we're in a position of influence and we work in many different roles and settings. So in terms of accountants in business and industry, there are a range of roles in which a multi-capitals perspective and a sustainability lens needs to be incorporated into governance, whether we're a board director, into our management responsibilities, or into the reporting and measurement that goes on in the organisation. And in doing so, partnering with other functions as accountants is incredibly important, because it is other functions that are generally going to be responsible or own the data. But we need to incorporate that data into analysis and reporting that flows through the organisation. And of course, we have accountants in the firms who can enhance their advisory and assurance services to deliver confidence in management and reporting. And I'll talk a little bit about assurance in a moment. Next slide, please. I won't spend long on this slide, but I think it's really fundamental that to add value and to partner in business today, it is critical to know the issues and the stakeholders. This is really, I think, important because you can only achieve better decision making and reporting if you understand the expectations, the concerns, what's material in relation to your key stakeholders, and the priorities for value creation related to strategy and your business model will flow out of very deep and meaningful stakeholder engagement, and the key trends affecting us as a company in our industry, whether that may be urbanization, climate change, resource scarcity. So I think it's incredibly important for accountants to be totally attuned to what the issues are from a wider stakeholder lens. That is a foundational part, I think, of being able to contribute to sustainability and integrated reporting as an accountant, whether in an assurance or advisory setting or whether in business and industry. Next slide, please. So one of the fundamental things, of course, that we do as accountants is provide credibility to information and data. And this is really, I think, at the heart of what is our strength and our core professional competence. So I think in this whole space of sustainability and integrated reporting, our role can be seen predominantly through providing rigorous data collection systems, processes, responsibilities and controls, and strengthening that accountability for the reporting process and to document solid evidence for internal and external auditors. So this involves various steps that are outlined on the slide here that you may find useful, starting with data itself, what is data is needed, where does it come from, and how is it consolidated. And then obviously people and what their responsibilities are and how do we apply controls in the right areas. And then in terms of process, policies, controls, and ensuring comparability and consistency through the use of standards. And then, of course, the next part of this area is systems to collect and consolidate and analyze data. And then finally, actions to improve the quality and maturity of the information we're reporting. So I think as accountants, as a core element of what we do, it's really thinking about how we provide credibility to the data and information that we're using for decision making and that we're using for reporting. And this is an incredibly important part of what we do. And I think where we can usefully help and partner other functions who may own or be responsible for the non-financial data that we're working with. Next slide, please. So let's just talk a little bit, and I'll finish off with assurance. And of course, assurance is critically important in terms of delivering confidence through either reasonable or limited assurance involving the evaluation of processes, systems, and data. So I think the first thing I will say here, of course, is that the ISAE 3000 is the most widely used international standard for assurance over non-financial information, and that's issued, of course, by the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board. And I think it's really important to understand that the application of of this global standard 3000 ensures high quality assurance engagements. And that includes standards around quality control, ethics and independence requirements. So for the public interest to be protected, the insurance engagement partner must be independent, comply with the Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants, and be a member of a firm that applies the quality control standards ISQ C1. So I think this is really important for the for ensuring trust in the overall market for assurance engagements and assuring confidence in the assurance services provided by both accountants and non-accountants. And I think as a profession, we need to prevent the proliferation of other standards for assurance when we already have a global standard in place. And also, I think it's important to reflect on there is research to show the distinct advantages of having an accounting firm deliver the insurance engagement. And I've referenced some research here that shows how having an accounting firm doing the assurance engagement leads to a lower cost of capital and other related benefits. But of course, accountants, we have specialist knowledge and competence in assurance skills and techniques developed through extensive training and practical application. But this will need to be supplemented by bringing in people with subject matter expertise related to the specific issues, topics and subjects that we're assuring. So whether it's emissions or whether it's intellectual capital or human related issues, people related issues, etc., we will undoubtedly probably find ourselves trying to bring in the necessary subject matter expertise to complement the assurance engagement. So on my penultimate slide, next slide please, I'm just going to look at a few features, a few key features of assurance. And I think most people will be aware of these. So of course, it's a three-party relationship in which the roles and responsibilities need to be clear between the independent practitioner and management. And this is important to enable a relationship of trust between management and the user. Ultimately, the user of a sustainability integrated report or any report wants to know the extent to which they can rely on the information provided by management. So it's important that the roles and responsibilities between these three parties are clear and well defined. It's also critical that we identify the subject matter. An insurance engagement requires clearly identified subject matter that is going to be evaluated. So an organisation may seek assurance on a range of subject matters when it comes to non-financial information or KPIs. It may be greenhouse gas emissions, water use, waste, accident frequency, but also it may be on the not just the numerical or quantitative aspects of reporting. It may also be on the narrative aspects of reporting. And the subject of assurance, of course, may not always be the published information. It may also be around the effectiveness of a process, a control, or whether a methodology has been applied appropriately. Then we need suitable criteria and suitable frameworks. The assurance provider, of course, must evaluate the subject matter against a specific set of criteria that provide a frame of reference. This may be a set of regulations, a reputable framework, whether it's GRI, SASB, or the BRSR, or even indeed an internal control framework like COSO. Or it could be criteria developed by management. And this criteria needs to be suitable for the engagement, and it may be supplemented by industry-specific criteria. Then, of course, we need evidence. In order to form an opinion as an assurance provider, we need to carry out certain procedures to obtain sufficient and appropriate evidence to support our conclusion. And of course, we deliver an assurance report and express a conclusion that can hopefully enhance confidence and provide recommendations on improvement. Next slide. Thank you. So just to finish off, I think there are some issues to consider when it comes to the assurance of non-financial information. It's not always straightforward. There are a number of issues to consider by both practitioner and management. And I've listed some of the issues here. And on my final slide, I've also included some resources which you can refer to look and explore a little bit further these challenges and how they can be overcome. But in terms of client readiness, there's always and very often the possibility that the company itself hasn't a mature non-financial information reporting process or the appropriate internal control systems. Certainly, in many cases, they are not on the same level as for financial reporting, and that's understandable. So it's important to look at what can be done in relation to helping companies enhance the maturity of their reporting process and their control systems, and looking at how information is extracted, how it can be prone to errors, and how those risks of errors and mistakes in the data and reporting process can be improved. Of course, a big issue and a big challenge in sustainability and integrated reporting is the lack of balanced disclosures. Given the relatively early stage of non-financial information reporting, many companies disclose or emphasize more their positive impacts or positive performance in related to value creation, but don't really talk about the downside. So it's very important to think about how to overcome this through looking more through risk through a materiality lens, ensuring materiality has been applied appropriately. An insurance practitioner should not accept a reasonable assurance engagement, for example, with only a partial scope of topics which do not cover the most material topics as identified by the company and the reporting framework. So the process of materiality and really understanding what are the most relevant topics related to the industry and the business and in relation to what users would expect to see in the report is really an important part of assurance. And also, of course, another challenge is dealing with forward-looking information. Much of the information that we're reporting now is prospective and forward-looking. And it's also narrative, and this has implications for the nature of evidence we obtain as part of the assurance engagement. And also, when undertaking such assurance, we may face non-suitable criteria or subject matter that is not easily identifiable or capable of consistent evaluation or measurement. So, for example, where reported information is dependent on external data providers in the value chain, in your supply chain, they may not be included in the management's control and reporting procedures. There may not be appropriate controls. Criteria would not be suitable where reported information is dependent on external data providers in the value chain who cannot be included in those procedures. So it's very important to assess whether the underlying subject matter that you're dealing with as part of your insurance engagement is appropriate for the specific objectives of the assurance engagement, and to ensure the definitions for metrics and measurements and the assumptions and estimates behind those exist to ensure consistent calculation. And finally, timeliness, of course, is always a challenge in this area, given often sustainability data and information can lag main reporting cycles and not be aligned to the main annual or securities and mandatory reporting filing deadlines. So in terms of resources, my final slide, there are numerous resources around how to deal with improving assurance. Of course, there's the guidance that has come out, the proposed guidance from the IWSB itself on extended external reporting. There is, on my final slide, I have listed various other useful guides to help deal with some of the specific challenges that face us in relation to assurance of sustainability in integrated information and reporting. And I hope they will be of use to you. But with that, it's been a great pleasure to join you today and share some of my thinking and knowledge on this critically important area for the accountancy profession and your work as accountants in business and industry, and also in the accounting firms.
great Mr. Stathis Gould, the Director Advocacy of IFIC, to join us and share your views on the role of accountants in the preparation of non-financial reports. You have highlighted very important aspect for our members on developing professional skills and competence to support stronger and more sustainable organizations. You have mentioned in your talk about defining the value creations, connecting value creations, enhancing and decision making and reporting, which the chartered accountants are going to help, and also the role of accounting into the sustainability reporting at large, which will provide the credibility to the various stakeholders about our reporting. With this, now I would like to invite Mr. Shikhar Jain, the Principal Counselor of CII Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development, to address the viewers on measuring the sustainability of business. Mr. Jain has over 25 years of experience on business sustainability. He is expert. Mr. Jain has developed, implemented, and integrated various EHS best practices, enhanced compliances and risk management framework for several top Indian and global firms. Within CII Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development, Mr. Jain responsibility includes training, advisory, and consulting on wide spectrum, including the leadership and strategy on sustainability, sustainability assurance, management systems, sustainability reporting, sustainability management framework across value chain. With this, over to Shikhar Jainji to address all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Kabra, and I should say it has been an extended evening over here, and all the guests from Europe and whichever part of the world they are. I think we have enough energy for the day. While in India it's already approaching 7:15, so I have my 10 minutes because it's an accountants forum, so we need to be very perfect with the numbers. So I think my 10 minutes are due for the session. So thank you, Mr. Kabra, and thank you, Mr. Singhal. I think from CII perspective, I think all on the panel know CII very well. It's the world's largest and one of the oldest industrial association, and we are representing Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development. And my thanks to the institute and also to the president and vice president for launching the two certified courses from ICAI from the point of view of capacity building. And I should say to the chairman of the Sustainability Reporting Standards Board, Dr. Singhal and Dr. Kabra, that I think you guys have best used the COVID time, I should say, because I never thought that ICAI will move so fast. And I think both of them are the silent guys, I should say, and they have followed our Prime Minister's approach very well to develop Atmanirbhar Bharat. So I should congratulate ICAI that what you are doing today. We have heard what GRI is doing, we have heard what IIRC is doing, we have heard what IFAC is doing. But now it's the time for us to show what we are doing, because we have been doing it for last 20 years and world is not recognizing it. So my courage to ICAI is that there is a full support from CII that we are going ahead with the Indian standard, which is there with the accountability from the ICAI, from your standards board. And I think when we say best use of COVID time, best use of COVID time for releasing it. But I know that institute have been working in past. They have done stakeholder consultation with almost everybody. We had on the panel representative from MCA, from SEBI, from other institutes, ICSI, from Cost Management Institute, from IICA. And I think it's a great job that ICAI has done. And from CI perspective, let me put forward some of the key points that we have experienced in last 10-20 years and the way forward for it. I think our relationship started with GRI almost 20 years back, when we thought that this is the reporting framework that has to be introduced in India. But with then, what we saw was that it took time for Indian corporates to understand the difference between reporting and disclosure, although they were doing the annual reports. But when the concept of sustainability reporting was introduced in India, I think what we learned as non-financial guys was that it's a report to be produced. And then it took us much time within the organization to understand that these are not only the report which we are good in doing, but these are the disclosures you are doing on the behalf of the company on the triple bottom line approach of environment, social, and economic parameters. And when these disclosures came in public domain, time when the stakeholders started asking questions to us, and that was the time when obvious integration of company secretary and the chartered accountants came in, because they started asking those questions to the investor relationship department or to the concerned guys. And then to fast track in 2010, we had the association coming up as CII with IIRC, which brought in the concept of integrated thinking. And I think great to have Mr. Marvin King on the panel. And I think IIRC introduced this concept of integrated thinking, which I think both Singhal and Kabra in our standards board, we have to see that we are able to pass on this message to all the CFOs in India. I think that is the success of this board and the standard that you are developing, because what we face as practitioners, the challenge is when this integrated thinking, integration is not taking place within the boards and within the top management or senior management of the organization. So this is I think one of the things that we have learned from IIRC with various forms of capitals and all. And I think the figures are known to everybody that in India around 460 companies are doing sustainability reporting. 70-80 of them are doing integrated reporting. Many companies have started integrated reporting into their annual reports and all. But what has come now, and I quote this example most of the time when it comes to the materiality part of it, because what I learned most from GRI was that in the stakeholder-based report, materiality is the most important part, and was also endorsed when we went into the principle-based reporting under integrated thinking from IIRC. And I remember my initial sort of a presentation in one of the board meetings where we were doing the materiality presentation for the sustainability report, and I got 20 minutes to the top management. And we introduced that these all are the 8 material issues coming from environment, social, and economic. And they said, well, very good, thanks for it. But none of them, according to us, is a material issue, because we cannot integrate that into our decision making. And these were all the financial guys on the other side. And being the senior guys and me being the junior most in the room, I could not say anything. But out of my humbleness, I asked the board that, sir, okay, fine, my all work I have presented to you, but can you tell me what are the material issues for your organization? And the CEO said that are confidential. So I think that was the mind frame in which we started working on sustainability in India, that the corporate India needs to integrate this thinking that IIRC introduced, that we have material issues which will come both from financial and non-financial, and that's where the long-term value proposition for the organization would be created. And I think that's where I will request Mr. Singhal, who is the chairman for the board, is that please don't call them as non-financial. I've heard almost all the speakers using this word financial and non-financial. And I think this is one thing on which both Charles and Mr. Marvin King will accept, that the moment we call them as non-financial, half the sort of strength of convincing the board gets out of the room. Please call them in the 21st century as financial and essential. Don't use the word non-financial. These are essentials, because we are now saying that 80% of the asset value is in the non-financial. So that is essential then. So call it as essential indicators for your business and not non-financial. We respect the Chartered Institute to take a lead in that. There is no sort of a second thought on that. But call them as essential indicators. That's where the board will get the relevance of it. And they will say that, yes, we need to sit and think over it. And today, that's what we are discussing with the boards that these are essential in post-COVID times. How do you learn about the disruption in your supply chain? You have never learned about it. What are the issues of labor? You don't know how much is the contractual labor working with you. I think these are the issues that will create the future of the world and of the India as well. And that's why my request to ICAI is that under Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is for our foreign guests, the English translation is Self-Reliant India. I think we have to develop the standards which are built on the learnings from the world that we have accepted, and let's do something which is best suited for our country, for development of our country, because we have to safeguard our mother nature, our earth, the social issues, which are more relevant for us. They are not relevant for Europeans or Americans as much as it is for us, because most of the multinationals are having the supply chain in India. And if those things are not integrated in our supply chain, I think we might lose a lot. And then my second learning was, as I talk about materiality, then from IIRC and then coming to 2017, 2018, 19, I saw in India a sea change coming in, and I think all the previous guys have spoken on that. This word called ESG, I thought that we have again taken a boomerang sort of a thing. It started with ESG, I think, ages back. We then went into sustainability, calling it then integrated thinking, and all of a sudden the ESG guys came in, and that had a lot of traction with the boards. The reason for that was that this is the investor who was asking for ESG in India. And you will be surprised that when I'm looking into the way the ESG ratings are happening in India, because there is no consistency in that. So my request is what IFAC presented, the assurance standard or the way the assurance has to be done. I think the Chartered Institute has great responsibility to also come out with the assurance standards on this, because the comparability would be very difficult to do then, because that's the two thing in ESG ratings I have seen. First, the boundary protocols. The Indian corporates are rated on something that they might be doing wrong in Australia or something that we are doing in Europe. But you are rating my Indian operations and you are not rating my other operations. But they say that they are picking up all the information from public domain, created their matrices and all. And the latest learning was that in one of the board meetings where the ESG results were getting presented by the investor relationship department, and I think they got the least marks in governance. On the scale of 1 to 10, they got only 1.5 or 2 on governance. So then the CEO of the organization asked us as CII that, you guys have been involved with us for last 4 or 5 years, but why we are getting so low on the governance part? Now that's the learning that we have to share with him. We have to say to them that by doing the disclosures or by setting up the internal processes in place does not means that you are taking sound decision making. I think governance is the reflection of your integrated thinking, that how many decisions you have taken in a year which supports the long-term vision of the organization. How many stakeholders you have held during your decision making, or you have been very much selfish, only thinking about your company and your direct stakeholders. So I think that is where your governance and leadership has to come. So the new 21st century, already the 2 decades have passed, but I think we can fast track. And my request to ICAI is that let's develop a model which you have already in a way presented into the standards board, is that let's have an integration of SDGs, because that is a long-term thing that Government of India through Niti Aayog have to reflect. So what are the SDG specific targets to India, and how the governance is playing role by integrating those Indian specific targets, and how we are working for all these stakeholders and creating a future model is the role that all of us have to now build in. And I think from CI perspective, I think it's the trust and the confidence. I think world is looking at us, and we are at the right time introducing these sort of standards, which we call as sustainability reporting standards and the standards board. And I think, Mr. Singhal, please don't take it as a comment from me, because the only sort of negative thing that I always say to the institutes are that you guys are there only for a year. and you have many things to be done in a year. So please, we are talking of sustainability over here because you have championed it. My request would be, in whatever capacity from the institute, this work should keep on carrying forward. I think that's the key responsibility, that we need to present it to the world, that what is the Indian way of doing and practicing sustainability, which we have learned from our peers from foreign, and we have got the esteemed panel with us. We got the JS, and I think next year might be, hopefully, once the post-COVID era starts, I think at some time, which is the Davos considered to be the Mecca of all the CEOs and CFOs, let's present the Indian case over there, that how the Sustainability Reporting Standards Board have developed an international way of doing the things, and which followed all the approaches, because we have taken all the approaches into stakeholder consideration by developing this standard. So we are not competing against anybody. I think all the stakeholders that I see on panel today, GRI, IIRC, IFAC, they have contributed so much in the global fraternity. They are opening up in India also. So we need to work along with them, but we need to think of India and help the world. And that's what I will say in my closing remarks, that CII there with you. And let's see that what are the forums where we can jointly do this sessions, take it forward. And I think more the CFOs, we can do the change as change agents. I think the responsibility of adaptation will become very easy. So with this, I think I again congratulate the team at ICAI, because it might be many people in your team who have done very hard job to come forward and release that as the standards, because GRI took some time from guidelines to standards, but I think in India we are directly starting from standards. So it's a great responsibility on us to showcase to the world its implementation. And as CII, we are the practitioners, we are the implementers, and we will need first 10, 20, 30 companies which adopt it fast, show the impact based of it, and then how the value has been created. So over to you, Mr. Singhal and the Institute, and thanks for involving me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shikhar, for your generous praise for the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India, and more so the faith on the ICAI. And I really like this financial and the essential indicators, Tom. And that's why we have not named our program as non-financial reporting. We have said enhanced corporate reporting. And I'm also extremely, delighted to see that Professor Marvin King is here from last even 2 hours, 45 minutes or so, and same as Dennis Gold and Charles Tilley. As the chairman of the board, I would like to present a report card of the first 6 months of the board. I take your point that, we are normally the chairman and vice chairman for 1 year, but let me narrate in 2 minutes that what we have done in 6 months. So this board was formed on 12th of February 2020. We did a global webinar on COVID-19 need for strategic focus on the Sustainable Development Goals. Then we did a webinar on emerging opportunities for chartered accountant in sustainability reporting. We also hosted a program on the World Environment Day. We also co-hosted an online regional focus group for India along with CII on the consultation draft of the revised IR framework. We participated in the GRI South Asia Virtual Regional Summit 2020, Empowering Decision for a Sustainable Future. And with a view to develop interests of member in SDG, we have launched Identify the Champions of Sustainable Development Goal through the UN Fund Quiz, whereby we are inviting suggestions from members on how to reduce carbon emissions, and the best 17 entries for 17 SDGs will be awarded Certificate of Appreciation. Board is also developing brief booklet on all the 17 sustainable development goals with an objective to create interest and development, understanding of members, and also suggest ways in which, as a professional, we can contribute in achievement of SDGs. We are bringing out a thought leadership research paper on integrated reporting in India. It's a joint research with the IIRC to assess the current practices. We are launching the Sustainability Reporting Awards. We are doing the research on role of accountants in measuring and reporting contribution to SDGs by public and private sector. We are working on the brand building on accountants' crucial role as an essential driver of strong and sustainable organizations. And aimed at capacity building, we have launched these two programs. We are working on the assurance standard for this integrated reporting. So, and this is what we have done in last 6 months, and still there are 6.5 months. There's a good 5.5 months, and this board is going to remain. So while the people would change, obviously to have a fresh thinking also, but these activities will continue. So I thank all the panelists for their valuable insights and time, and I request my vice chairman, I call him my co-chairman, to give a formal vote of thanks. Over to you, Durgesh Bhai.
Thank you, Chairman, sir. It was indeed a pleasure to hear all the dignitaries today, and I am sure that all the attendees who are part of this webinar has been enlightened with the deliberations and thoughts shared in this webinar by all the professionals acting as a sustainability practitioners to be the champions for sustainable and reasonable practices. Friends, embracing the business responsibility reporting standards in keeping with the global practice really promote better corporate governance, but also help in achieving United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. SRSB further shares a common vision to advance professional growth in sustainability, adding value for the people, organization, and planet. In this perspective, it is important to hone skill of present and future members of the Institute. At the same time, handhold them to tap tremendous opportunities opening with the sustainability reporting process, which cannot be achieved without developing professional skills and competence. I would like to thank all panel speakers, Shri Amarjit Singh Ji, in absentia, Professor Marvin Kings, Mr. Charles Tilly, Mr. Timothy J. Mohin, Mr. Stathis Gould, and Mr. Shikhar Jain for the immensely useful deliberation. Also to the Deputy Secretary, G.K. Singh Ji, who has come and addressed all of us and told what the developments at the Ministry of Corporate Affairs level with respect to the BRR. I'm extremely thankful to our Honorable President and Vice President too for their thought leadership and sparing their valuable time and guiding us time and again. I also thank all the attendees of the webinar for showing interest in the new areas of sustainability reporting. We welcome all the participants to give their inputs at the sustainability@icai.in for initiatives that can be undertaken by the board. At last, I would like to thank the supporting staff and the Secretary of SRSB also. For this, good evening to all and thanks to all.
Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you.
Namaste. Namaste.
This was an extended session. Thank you. Namaste.